Hi everyone, good morning. I'm Alexis Washa, I'm an editor at Crown, and I'm so pleased and privileged to be here. It's really such an honor to be presenting at this breakfast. I know it's one of BEA's most beloved events. Otherwise, how could we fill a room this early? And ever since I was a child, in my teenage years, spending my lunch hour not in the cafeteria, but in the school library with Jack Kerouac and Jane Eyre, I know that when I'm with librarians, I am among my people. So I'm thrilled to be here amongst such incredible company. The writers here are some people that I have long loved and admired. And I'm really excited to be introducing you to a new name here today, one that I'm sure is going to become beloved for years to come, the extraordinarily talented Marie-Helene Bertino. So it's hard to pinpoint exactly what it made me fall in love with Marie's debut novel, 2 a.m. at the Cat's Pajamas. First of all, the title itself is irresistible. The writing itself, though, is the thing that grabs an editor first and foremost, I think. A truly fresh voice is something that is very difficult for all of us to find, but I knew from the opening lines of this book that Marie had a natural command for language, a sly sense of humor, and an irresistible way of making it impossible not to turn the next page. Then, of course, there are the characters in Cat's Pajamas. Serena, a recently divorced fifth-grade teacher, alone just before Christmas and finding herself an outsider from the cool crowd yet again, a feeling I know all too well. But she finds her way to a dinner party that evening where she might meet an old flame, and what happens there is really one of the makings of, I think, one of the best romantic comedies yet to be made. We have Jack Lorca, who is the gruff but lovable owner of the jazz club, the Cat's Pajamas, who wants to keep up his grandfather's legacy by presiding over what's now a fading neighborhood institution, but he's also desperately trying to keep his own life together and maintain a great relationship with his teenage son. And of course, there's the star of the show, 9-year-old Madeline Altamari, a girl after my own heart, who shimmies along to jazz legend Blossom Dearie, takes care of her widowed dad, defiantly faces down the mean girls at school, and wins the hearts of everyone in her neighborhood. So, last but not least about this book is the incredible setting. I am a Philly girl myself, so I was predisposed to love this novel. It takes place over the course of just one day in Philadelphia, and just happens to be the day before Christmas Eve. So over the course of these 24 hours, the city comes to life in a way that can really only be described as magical. From the grit and grime of the streets that are now hushed under the layer of falling snow, to the twinkling holiday lights on the row houses of Rittenhouse Square, to the delectable aromas of the 9th Street Italian Market, this book transforms the city of my childhood into something truly to be treasured. I think every 9-year-old girl should get the chance to grow up in the Philly of Marie-Helene's imagination. So in the end, of course, it's all of these things combined, voice, character, and place, that make a novel truly beloved. And it makes Cat's Pajamas a book of my heart, one that I've been incredibly privileged to work on, and one that I've been pressing into the hands of friends and pretty much virtual strangers for the last few months. So I apologize if I've accosted one of you. I probably will do that again. But I hope that once you turn the last page of this book, you'll start doing the same thing to your readers and your friends. So it's my true pleasure to introduce to you Marie-Helene Bertino.
Thank you so much. Alexis, that was beautiful. Thank you. It's a dream to be published by Crown, and it's a dream to be invited to speak here this morning with all of you and with authors who I have long admired as well. I feel incredibly honored, and thank you. I can't wing it, because me winging it equals too many anecdotes about my cats. So... Oh, would you like that? That's great, because this morning they did the cutest thing. I'll tell you about it. I guess I'll talk about the book instead. Well, I thought I would begin by making a salacious and stunning confession. In August, Crown will be publishing my debut novel, 2 a.m. at the Cat's Pajamas. However, it is not actually my first novel. My first novel was called The Dream Crystal, and I wrote it in a feverish daze one summer when I was 12. I was a really weird 12-year-old girl. My uniform was an unfashionable denim jacket with tons of monkey's pins. My teeth were bucked, my eyes were ruined from reading, so I had really thick Becca glasses from Life Goes On, and I had frizzy, curly hair I did not understand. That summer, like every summer, my mom dropped me off at my grandmother's house on the Delaware Bay in New Jersey, so I would know something other than the city, Philadelphia, where I was raised. Granny refused to let me stay inside all day, so she enrolled me in tennis lessons. So when I wasn't walloping the ball against the wall, I was writing the Dream Crystal in the pages of a 3-subject copybook. The Dream Crystal was about a princess named Sunalay who is the rightful ruler of a secret fairyland I named Neshaminy after my local mall. Sunalay is given amnesia by a jealous sorceress named Satrin and sent to live in the human world, unaware of her magical powers until one day she meets a bunch of fairies who were all named after my friends. I wanted Sunalay to have spunk and guts like Elanwy from the Black Cauldron series, but I also wanted her to have true friends like Nancy Drew's compatriots, Bess and George. I wanted to use the word crimson as much as humanly possible. So Granny and I spent every night in. We'd put on Wheel of Fortune, and she would work a crossword puzzle, and I would write. And as the copybook's pages began to fill with my very careful cursive, it became a sacred object. There are people who have not touched the small of their lovers' backs with as much tenderness as I used to hold that copybook. To me, it was a sentient being. So in September, I returned to the city and I entered the 7th grade, where on one otherwise magicless afternoon in October, my teacher announced that a nearby library in Huntington Valley was having a Write and Illustrate Your Own Book contest. The due date was the following month, but the manuscript had to be typed. We didn't have a computer. My family had so little money that my mother had taught me creative bill paying. Some of you might know what that is. It means paying every bill that says final notice and throwing the rest out. And that night, I explained to her whatever it took, I had to find a way to type out my book. By then, my mom knew that there was going to be no life for me other than the one that creativity forged. So somehow she found $300 and we bought a really high-tech word processor. And I spent the next month waking up early and typing the book before school. And when it was finished, the Dream Crystal was 105 pages, 109 including my meticulous illustrations. My mom made 2 copies on the copy machine at work, and we sent the envelope to the library. Then I spent the next month praying that all the other books that all the other 12-year-olds had written over the summer wouldn't compare to mine. I spent a lot of hours of my life praying that I'll get published in this magazine or that, and most of them have been in vain. But this time, my first, the story ends happily. The librarian, Nancy Hensler, from the Huntington Valley Library, called me to tell me that my book won. That there had been other entries, but I was apparently the only 12-year-old who had spent her summer vacation writing a full-length book. I was shocked. The Dream Crystal was bound and placed in the library stacks where you can still find it today. And this is it. This is when I was still in cover design. And that was the very first year the Huntington Valley Library offered that prize, and it's on its 24th year now. I called them a few days ago to tell them I was going to be speaking about them. I asked them if there was anything they'd like to say, and they just said that they've had so much fun encouraging children throughout all of these years to become writers. And that now they have a little gala, so the kids can get dressed up and accept their bound books every year. And I said, there was no gala when I won, but maybe I'll go back. So I wrote 2 a.m. at the Cat's Pajamas in very much the same way over the course of 12 years. I wrote it by hand at first, before and after, and sometimes during the obligations and jobs that make me valid and recognizable to the rest of the world, and using company resources whenever possible to print out my work covertly. 2 a.m. at the Cat's Pajamas is about a princess named Sunalay who is given amnesia by a jealous sorceress. Just kidding. It's about an almost 10-year-old girl named Madeline who is having trouble figuring out how to fit in the world. She no longer has a mother, she has a hermetic, troubled father, and she's a bit of a jerk. However, she has been gifted with a prodigious singing voice, and all she cares about is fine-tuning it so it can be her ticket out of Philadelphia. The way I feel about writing is the way Madeline feels about singing. It was impossible to feel sad when she was singing, even when the song she was singing was sad. 2 a.m. at the Cat's Pajamas covers 24 important hours as Madeline's life bumps up against the lives of a few other characters who Alexis mentioned. Serena Green, who is beginning a new life as a divorcee, a self-defeating club owner named Lorca, and their fates collide at 2 a.m. at his club, Cat's Pajamas. But though we follow these main characters, the point of view hops in and out of heads of passersby. And this improvising attention span was important to me, not only because the book is partly about jazz, but also because it's a book about a little girl desperate to share her voice. So I wanted everyone to get a voice, so to speak. The man selling pinwheels on Rittenhouse Square, the bored bridesmaid at the bachelorette party, even Pedro the dog with Wanderlust. And even the city itself. It took me a long time to grow into the person who could write this book. I wanted to write something original and merciless on the line, but that a reader could still enjoy. That took risks, and that included the full breadth of human emotions as I have experienced them. Minor jealousy, regret, sadness. And that meant including something that is famously hard, some would say impossible, to write: joy. At the end of this novel, I took what some people might consider to be a huge risk. It was risky because of how it manifests, and I'm not going to tell you what happens, but also because it presents a particular moment of joy. It pains me to say this, but now more than ever, joy has become an enormous risk. As is often quoted in writing classes, all happy families are alike. Only, no, they're not. I don't know any happy families that haven't struggled or haven't achieved their happiness without some kind of suffering. So what I tell my students instead is, it's really hard to write the full complexities of joy and optimism, but it's not impossible. As a first-time novelist, I certainly felt pressure to make something enormous happen, like a murder or like a devastating betrayal. At one point I was like, maybe they'll all get murdered or there'll be a betrayal on page 5, but I found that most people's lives exist and gather and grow in seemingly innocuous, quiet moments on a random Wednesday night when you say yes instead of no, and you end up walking with your old friend through the city, as Serena Green does. At the end of this night, Madeline is still a poor, motherless girl in old stockings, but something important has shifted. Madeline longs to sing. Serena longs to be the main character of her life. Lorca longs to be a better father. Pedro the dog longs to wander. Even Philadelphia, which ends up speaking for itself, longs to keep its sons and daughters close. Longing, I think, is one of the most narrative of emotions. Longing for love, longing to mean something, longing for excitement. Conflict, and therefore plot, is so often sparked by some kind of longing. And growing up, I wasn't allowed to go out after school or at night, and every night I longed to be outside having adventures. And eventually, when I reached the age where my decisions were my own, I left and I sought out musicians and poets and night dwellers in Philadelphia until Philadelphia began to feel small. So my friend Dana and I traveled and worked around America for a year, and we had adventures. And then I moved to New York City, a city of night dwellers. And it was in my first year there that I experienced a peculiar feeling, homesickness. And to my surprise, I longed for Philadelphia. And that's when I began to write this novel. 2 a.m. at the Cat's Pajamas, then, is a story about an almost 10-year-old girl who longs to go out, written by a 24-year-old woman who longed to go home. And I do hope you enjoy it. Thank you so much for your time.